Committee meeting order. First item on the agenda, Veterans Office, Mr. Farabee. Anything to report?
No report, sir.
Any questions for the Veterans Office? If not, next, County Sealer, Wayne Taylor. We have any questions for the County Sealer? Thank you, Wayne. Board of Elections, Mr. Whitney. Any questions for the Board of Elections? If not, thank you. District Attorney, Christy Sprague. Anyone have any questions for the District Attorney? I'm kind of liking this. Okay, thank you, Christy. Jake Wish. Come on. Yes, you do. Get out there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just a brief overview of the progress on the radio project. We're probably 95% there. All the consoles are installed. The old consoles have been removed. We're doing final testing on the high band system. We did run into some issues that we're going to work on the next week with Motorola to do with vote scanning on some of the mobiles in marginal coverage areas. We had a car carrier fire on the interstate this weekend, and there were some coverage issues because the mobiles, we feel, were confused as to which tower to vote for. So we're working on a software update for that, or a way to correct those issues. But every system that you start up with this kind of complexity is going to have system startup issues. So it's going to take a while for us to get some of the bugs out. But overall, it's been a very good testing result. We had a 99% coverage tile test on the LMR, so that was good. Now we're actually gone live. We've told the fire departments to use the radios. We still have a low band in their vehicles as a backup, but they're now switched totally over to the new high band system. Another phase of the project is the paging. And paging we did kind of in-house with the help of Wells. We did propagation studies. We knew at the time that there would be some areas that would be marginal in coverage with pocket pagers. In saying that, we found that we have marginal coverage in North Hudson, Scroon, and Lewis, E-Town. The solution for that is the installation of 2 drop-in sites and the installation of 1 transmitter. And I got the quotes from Wells, the total cost, and I can email these. The total cost is around $26,000 for the 2 drop-ins, the install, the antennas, and the transmitter. Now, we plan on actually taking a transmitter on Palmer Hill and moving that to Wells, which would drop the price by $10,000. So we'd be around 15. But this is not something that was unexpected. We knew this when we went ahead with the paging system. We were just hoping that we would not have to do drop-in sites, but these areas are so marginal and it's so important that we have 100% reliability that we feel strongly that this needs to be done. So I'd like a resolution to proceed with this additional drop-in sites and transmitter.
Mr. Farabee, did you have a question? Or?
No, I can't move it. I'm not on the committee, but somebody wants to move.
Mr. Moore, moving it, second. Mr. Morrow, discussion. Mr. Farabee.
Is this already budgeted, Don?
It's going to come out of the radio project, and Linda told me there's roughly $700,000 left in the project, below the $10 million. So that's where it would come from.
And this is additional to the original project? So
It's additional. It is additional.
We don't have to go to bid for it?
No.
It's going to go right
Well, that's a question I've got to ask.
It's a good question to ask. Why do we go directly to them again?
Yep. And I don't know, because they're doing the install of the system, but they're going through Motorola, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. So if we have to go to bid, we will.
Well, I think clearly that we've seen that the assumption that only Motorola could install this other system isn't completely true. I think they're being installed by other folks. So on the concept that only Motorola can install these drop-ins, I'd just like to...
These won't be Motorola drop-ins. These are Daniels.
Okay.
Any other questions on the motion? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried.
That's all I have.
I wanted to point out that I guess it's an EMT class that was held in Wilmington, took a tour of the dispatch center, and they came away with a different outlook on what the dispatchers go through.
Thank you.
Everybody that toured it made that comment. I saw the guys over the weekend. And the radio system, I mean, from an actual user myself, I mean, it is some impressive. It is actually, can't remember what day last week we were hearing, I don't know if it's good or bad, that we were hearing Ticonderoga crystal clear in Wilmington. Just unbelievable to have communicate. Actually, the guys are really struggling because now we have so many frequencies to get used to. It's taken some time, but it really, really is impressive. It really does work, so.
I have one more question, which
James,
is brought up.
go
Don, how long do you keep 911 calls on record? Or how far back can you go to review?
Well, that is a good question, Mr. Farabee. We were ordered long ago to keep them indefinitely, and that's what we're doing.
Okay. Good, thanks.
Most dispatch centers, it's 90 days.
Mr. Mario.
A review or a refresher to me. What was the final status then on the county's position with the fire departments and the emergency squads for paging? Did we allocate X amount of pagers per department, or were those all then to be purchased privately? I just don't know.
It was all privately.
Yeah.
So all of them were private to them?
The original plan was that the fire departments would purchase both mobiles and pagers. The county ended up picking up the mobiles. The pagers were left to the fire departments, and that's why it's been up to this point.
And
Pagers and the portable radios.
Right.
most of them have bought their pagers, some have not. And we're not going to migrate over until we get all the bugs worked out of the system, so.
The other thing I'd like to point out is that, as you recall, this is actually a $17 million project, the overall cost. We were given $10 million. We have not exceeded that $10 million. The rest of that $7 million came from shared costs with the state police, NISAC, and grants that Mike Mascarenas and Don's office got. So $7 million of this project was covered by cost other than county taxpayers.
Any other questions? No, thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Cutting, I believe, is on vacation. Probation, Julie Beatty, we have your report.
Good morning. You have my written report, so unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions for probation? Not, thank you, Julie. And Public Defender. Anyone have any questions for the public? Oh, Bill, why don't you come on up, please? Looks like we've got some questions. Mr. Grinnell, you were first.
There's information floating around the county that we are going to be requiring public defenders at any arraignment that takes place. Is that factual?
I think this is a discussion that's probably best set for Mr. Boutel to come forward and talk to you all. The simple answer is that the interpretation of the New York Court of Appeals decision is that arraignment is a critical juncture in a criminal defense, and that at all critical junctures, the defendant gets an attorney.
Okay, let me answer that too, okay? There was a Court of Appeals case that ordered 4 counties to comply with that ruling. So there are 4 counties that currently are under a court order to provide coverage for at arraignment for attorneys, whether they be assigned counsel or public defenders or whatever. That shoe has not dropped for the rest of the counties at this point. There is talk that it probably will, but as of this point it has not. So we're still in that same position we were before. Our public defender's office has offered to make those arraignments when they can, if they're available, and can do it, they would do that. But again, it has not dropped for the rest of the counties.
Let me run a scenario by you, in theory, that 10 o'clock Saturday night, the Ticonderoga Police Force arrests a person in town for whatever reason. They take that person to the local JP that says they've got to be arraigned before they go to court. I don't see a public defender driving from Lake Placid to Ticonderoga in the middle of the night on a Saturday night, okay? So, Sunday, maybe, maybe not. Ticonderoga then has the obligation of holding that person for up to 36, 40 hours. That means we're going to be hiring another officer to come on duty at overtime expense, and who pays for all of this? You've got your one officer there, you've got to have another to cover the shift work. Who's going to pay for all this? How's that going to be covered? You going to stick the town with that? The county's going to pay for it? The state going to pay for it? Is it even been considered? I think it's
believe me, it's
important that these things get looked at, or, I mean, you could always appoint a couple more public defenders, put one at Ticonderoga, maybe one at Mariah, spread them around the county, so, you've got coverage, but then those folks are going to want to be compensated, I would assume, if they're called out in the middle of the night, or weekends, or holidays, and where does that money come from? I think this is something the county really needs to take a strong position on, and I think we're behind the curve already.
It's interesting that the Court of Appeals came out with the decision they did in the Harrell Herring decision that said an arraignment is a critical juncture. Critical junctures, you get a defense attorney. And then, as Mr. Palmer said, the 5 counties involved in the subsequent civil case got all the government funding. No other county got funding. So we have this conflict of, here's a rule, but where's the money? It only goes to those other 5 counties. And we at the Public Defender's Office have raised the issue. We're trying to come up with a solution. Driving out at 3 in the morning on a Saturday night is not easy for anybody, financially or mentally. But is it something that we have to do? Probably. And we've from our office, we've made an effort in Albany to get the money. We've looked for grants, holding cells. I don't know if that's an answer. Hiring other people. I don't know if that's an answer. Stopping the criminal justice system at 3 in the morning on a Saturday morning. I don't know if that's the answer either, but it's worthy of a discussion like you've just brought up.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy solution, I don't think. Mr. Mario.
Along those same lines, as Bill mentioned, and Mr. Palmer, if we're meeting the legal criteria as we have been, the Court of Appeals really has not designated the other counties. Clearly, at this point, I don't understand why our county department then would take it upon themselves to say, we believe this is the right thing to do, and we're going to bring this to the 18 local court systems in some capacity. I just think that we needed to talk about this, or should talk about it a little bit further before everybody gets sideways here. If we're meeting the legal criteria at arraignments now, as we have been for 20 years, I don't understand why the Public Defender's Office would like to change that now without the funding or without the mandate from the state. I just don't understand why we're pressing the envelope when right now it doesn't seem to be necessary.
Well, again, I think Mr. Butel is probably the better one to be standing up there representing the office in this discussion, but not to leave the question dangling, an interpretation of that New York Court of Appeals case is that we should have attorneys at arraignment. That's a simple interpretation. And I think everybody who is in a courtroom with a defendant standing there, whether you're a judge, a prosecutor, or a defense counsel, we don't want a 16-year-old spending a night in jail when they shouldn't be there. and we don't want somebody losing their job because they were in jail when they shouldn't have been there. That's what everybody's trying to do, and so far I think we're doing a great job doing it. Everybody who's involved, we're just trying to protect that 1 in 1,000 instance that might occur. And if this is the solution, how do we get there? We got to figure it out, and there's a lot of minds trying to come up with a good solution that everybody can afford.
I mean, the other shoe on this thing is that, that clearly even for a judge, if they have one attorney there, they're probably going to want the other. They're going to want the district attorney's office there as well. Because when you have to talk about the defendants, what the requirements are for that defendant during that arraignment, most judges want to hear from both sides. That's just how it is. So, how that ends up playing out, I mean, there's certain requirements under law that we have to respond to right now, but how we end up determining in the long run nobody's given us any real direction as to how we're going to do that.
Interesting. Mr. Marion?
On a different but somewhat similar. Years ago, with additional personnel in the public defender's office, part of the duties were to review the qualifications of individuals like myself who come in at 3 o'clock in the morning, being arraigned, judge says, blah, blah, blah. All I do is sign a piece of paper representing, I need public defender status. And I just wanted to make sure that we are still in the process and what the numbers are of reviewing those cases when someone does represent that they are qualified for public defender status when in fact, because we know some of these individuals, they have assets, they have things like that. We used to at least represent that we were reviewing those. And I'm just curious if we are still conscientiously looking at each one of those applications.
Every file gets reviewed for their qualifications to be represented by our office. There's too many files coming through for us to represent those that can pay for it. Yes.
Certainly something that bears close watching. Mr. Douglas?
I just want everybody to know that we have not lost sight of this, and this is something that's serving on the board of directors in NISAC. We've been all over this and trying to come up with solutions, so it isn't something that we've lost sight of here. I've had lots of conversations with Dan about this. We're on top of it, and we're working with other counties to come up with a solution that's agreeable and affordable to everybody.
One of the counties that was ordered under the civil suit to comply was Washington County, which is similar in size to ours. I think it'll be interesting to see what their costs are and how they handle it over the course of the next year or so, because I think that'll be a good, benchmark, so to speak, for us, because they're similar. They're a rural county, they're a fairly large county, and their population is somewhat similar to ours. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Washington County handles it.
Do you know what their funding was? You said that those 5 counties...
Supposedly their funding, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, was that their costs would be covered. Now, I don't know what that means with the state. I honestly don't. But whether that's true to a full extent, I don't know.
Mr. Morrow?
Mr. Mayor, you brought up a good point. Public defender or assigned counsel is given to the ones that can't afford it. And you look at their wealth and their income and stuff like that. Why would you be sending a taxpayers-funded public defender, whether it's Ticonderoga or anybody else, just to represent them when you don't even know if they deserve representation by a public defender or assigned counsel? That's waste of money. You really need to do some work about this. Just because, and they haven't thrown the hammer down yet, says they got to have a public defender. That's not true, unless they deserve it. That's a waste of taxpayers' money.
That's the great argument. I got it right.
Hey, Mr. Cannon?
The flip side of all this is if you had a defendant who had a real serious issue and you didn't provide the stuff that he should have, and he somehow flies the next day on the basis that that wasn't defended properly, and that can happen. So there's another side of that, to be sure.
Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you, Mr. Tanzer.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Anything else to come before public safety? If not, we stand adjourned.